A little bit of a late start again today. I was working on a little illustration. I might show you guys actually. That was pretty cool. Just a little Christmas illustration for a local MP. Oh, my IV cam is not connecting. Why is it not connecting? So let's see. I think what I have to do is relaunch this guy. So let's try this. So I'm gonna pop into my task manager. Find where's my IV cam? EasySoft IV cam. Let's end that task. Gone. And then we're going to. Yeah, I'm just setting up for the day. I'm gonna say I've got nothing really politically crazy to talk about that, but that's not necessarily the case. I think I've always got something a little bit sort of heavy to chew on in the morning. I like a big breakfast. So, there's a glare happening behind me there. So let's get this guy sorted out. Yeah, this is my morning routine. A little bit of craziness, but it's all good. Yeah. So I've been doing a lot of thinking about this idea of autonomy and why we value it so much, and it's kind of interesting. Um, why is autonomy so incredibly valuable to us? Because it's interesting. If we think about some of the characteristics of the way certain people think, there are those who believe in sort of the importance of community and the whole communal experience, and then there are others who think that it's more about autonomy of self. And then there's some people that say, well, the government should stay out of our business. And then there's the other side that says, well, no, we need more regulations because we're trying to build a better society, right? So there's all that stuff going on. I think, I guess the one thing that I do want to talk about in terms of autonomy is the fact that in a lot of ways is predicated on certain conditions to be true. And I think one of those conditions is that there is the personal wherewithal to be able to handle autonomy. There's the understanding of the responsibilities of autonomy. And that those perspectives sort of need to be considered. Okay, I'm just going to pop this up here. Let's see if we can turn this. How do we turn this display off? Let me pop in here real quick. Oh yeah, it's the extras, whatever that may be. Yeah, so this is what occupied me this morning. That's why I'm a little bit late. There you go. That was a fun one to do. No shadow pass on it, no lighting pass, but yeah, the client, in this case my wife, said it was good enough, so it's all good. All right, so that's that. So yeah, I was just thinking about that, and then the other thing that is worth sort of discussing and noting is this idea of the death of expertise, right? And it's triggered by a lot of different things that have been happening for the past year or so. Well, more than that, for the past 4 or 5 years. Oh, it's frightening. It's going on that long. This idea of this death of expertise, and I was reminded by it because of something that I was reading in one of the writing forums. Right. So there's an experienced writer that I speak with just via chat, a guy named Bob Sance, who's a successful screenwriter, and his post that he put on a writers group was something to the effect that don't expect to sell a $1 million screenplay right out of the gate, right? And I think there's a tendency for a lot of people to assume that. I know I did, right? You assume a certain amount of ability and talent. And, this is tied to autonomy, this belief that I think it's typified a lot of democracies, but this belief that the individual can surpass any of the conditions that currently enclose that individual, whether it's societal conditions, economic conditions. There's this idea. Autonomy gives you this idea that you can transcend yourself, right, and achieve things, and it's woven into the sort of the mythos of North American culture. The whole Horatio Alger rags to riches, sort of anybody can grow up to become president. That kind of a thing. The residual effect of that being this sort of steadfast belief that you can sell your very first screenplay for $1 million, right? So here's the thing, right? There are certain people who've been doing things for X number of years, who've achieved a certain level of success and experience and expertise in a particular area. And this is not elitist thinking. It's just plain practical thinking, right? If we were to take automobiles, right? If you were to get together with your buddies and build a car much similar to the Edsel in your garage and put it out for sale and say, well, why is nobody paying me $1 million for this car? It's just as good as a Ferrari, right? Why does Ferrari right out of the gate build a new model and get to sell it for $1 million, but I can't? I refuse to accept that, right? This is my car. It's brilliant. It's better than a Ferrari. So I'm gonna put a price tag of $2 million on it, right? And so straight away when I use that metaphor, we go, well, there's a lot of stuff that's working behind Ferrari. First of all, reputation. When Ferrari started winning Le Mans and all that, I don't know the full history of Ferrari. When they started building a reputation for winning races, couple that with the fact that they've been in the business for a dog's age. And in addition to that, they have teams of engineers tweaking and fine-tuning every small little facet of automotive engineering, right? Every tiny little thing. They'll optimize things by milliseconds and then creep that up with every iteration of a car. So there's a certain level of expertise that we can't ignore, right? So why do we do that with something like writing? I think there's the mythology that writing is this subjective experience. Nobody really knows how to craft a good story because it's completely subjective, right? Well, I don't entirely agree with that. Let me put another metaphor to you, right? Okay, so let's say there is expertise in orchestral musicians, right? They've got a certain level of expertise. We can agree with that, I hope, right? So you pick up the violin and you've been playing violin for 5 years and you get, just in your bedroom and you get to a certain level of expertise. And then you go out there and you expect to be paid as much as the first chair in whatever Philharmonic orchestra. And you're disappointed that you're not. And, you could arguably be better than the first chair violinist. And yet, that metaphor, a lot of us could probably agree, well, you know what? There's the experience, the expertise. There's the, somebody who's played in that orchestra for, let's say, 15 years. They have a certain level of craftsmanship. So why do we ignore that when it comes to storytelling and writing? It's interesting to me because I'd like to hear the counter argument. I'd like to hear, well, writing is still, and storytelling is still one of those last bastions where you don't need a boatload of experience and et cetera, right? It afflicts writing, I think, more so than something like concept art, because in my experience, concept art, there is a saying in the industry that the portfolio trumps everything, right? The show reel trumps everything, which it does. but there's a certain level of craftsmanship and expertise and devotion to your craft that radiates out of a portfolio and overrides anything like academic qualification or what have you. So I wonder if it's two things. Number one, perhaps there's a failure of higher education to address sort of levels of or to address this idea of creating experts for industry, perhaps, maybe, or the perception of the failure of higher education, perhaps, or maybe it's the fact that writing is something that all of us do since we were yay high, and perhaps because of that, it would sort of be akin to labeling somebody an expert speaker. Although, you know what? We seem to pay more credence, I think, to people who are expert orators than to writers. I see it on the Facebook writing groups all the time. People who have carved themselves out a little bit of a career are oftentimes challenged by writers who've no experience, who basically say, well, what the hell do you know, right? Or you're a gatekeeper preventing me from progressing forward. And it's unfortunate because there's a wealth of knowledge there that can be kind of tapped into and capitalized on. And I think to a certain degree, we need to understand that there is a level of craftsmanship and there is a level of expertise in operation to somebody who's been devoting decades to a particular field, right? And it doesn't mean that they're elite. It means they've studied every screw, every nail, every tiny little thing that goes into that subject matter that you're interested in, right? And their opinions should be valued. So back to this idea of autonomy versus more communal thinking. Well, autonomy to me is like potential energy. Now let me think this through, because I just thought of this now. I think autonomy is a demonstration of potential energy, and how we operate in whatever community we'd like to invest ourselves in, whether it's the art community or the writing community, that's a demonstration of kinetic energy, perhaps. There has to be a way of understanding communal oneness without it being a socialist demon. And there should also be an understanding of regulation-free autonomy as an expression of our lives in a democracy without it being this be-all, end-all. It's like the sledgehammer you bring down, isn't it? It's like you cannot impinge on my freedom. Yes, we all know that. You cannot impinge on freedom of speech. Yes, we know that. It's like the argument stopper, right? Because everyone is in agreement over that, right? And any sort of nuanced argument that seeks to control that freedom of speech or that personal freedom is seen as dictatorial. Maybe we need to step back from that a little bit, because we do understand hate speech and we do understand what that can lead to. I don't think we've defined its boundaries yet. And the political backlash against political correctness is demonstration of the fact that we haven't explored the boundaries of it. We haven't set limits yet. Now, the unfortunate thing about limits and the way limits work, and I was talking to my son about this. See, if you set a limit by about there, right, people will try to push as close as they possibly can, right? So we were talking about it in context of a game. There was some reward system for something that my son's playing online. I think it's a Steam game or something where if you hit a particular target, I think it was like 100,000. No, it was like 500,000. Then you got a particular reward. And if you got 499,000, that's not good enough. You wouldn't qualify it. And my son was like, but you know, it's so close anyway. And I just said, yeah, that's the power of limits. It doesn't take into account that we're in a continuum, right? So continuum thinking is very, very, very difficult to adjudicate, right? So I think we need these absolutes, these containers, these limits to help kind of define things. So if we look at the food industry, there might be a limit of certain chemicals that you could, say for example, there's an addictive sort of dopamine triggering substance that could be put into food, right? And the FDA comes and says, yeah, your limit, you can't put any more than this quantity in it. Well, you bet your ass the food companies will get as close to the line as they can legally possibly get away with, which sort of defeats the purpose of the limit for me. Because, you could be 0.0001 grams short of the legal limit and still not be liable from prosecution, right? So yeah. It's difficult to step back and say, well, can we put limits on language? Because nothing's more fluid than language, right? It's ever evolving. So yeah, these are my morning thoughts. I was just getting set up. I didn't think I'd have much to talk about, but some interesting things. I'm reformulating my beliefs that I had when I was younger, because our current times that we live in is flex testing a lot of those. That's good though. It's really, really good. I think one thing I believed as a kid is that you must always challenge your beliefs, because the beliefs that stand up to your own self-scrutiny are the most powerful ones, and they form the core fabric of who you are. So I don't think you should believe anything without question. I think you should always be challenging yourself, as well as the fact that we evolve. We are not static beings, we're dynamic. So as we progress through this world, as we age, we receive new information, we make new cross-references with new data, and we come up with new interpretations of life. That's the joy of living, right? Something that I think we can all agree that something that you believed when you were 10 is not something you believe when you're 16, right? So why can we not say something that you believed when you were 20 or 30 is not something you believe when you're 40 or 50, right? It just seems like a logical progression to me. So, yeah. So that's it. Those are my morning thoughts, and I'm going to get ready for my first session, and I will talk to you guys later.